The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. Thank you for sticking with us and joining us. I know we're late getting to you this morning because we had technical difficulties. Sometimes we have gremlins. You know, live is always interesting. And we are live this morning, joining you from Woodland Hills, from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I'm your host for this next whatever's left of the hour. Right? Usually we're here for an hour. Now, normally on Wednesdays, when we have the opportunity, we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with us to answer your questions. But today, she's unable to be with us, so we have the fabulous Evelyn Kung, who's going to be joining us momentarily. But I wanted to take just a second to say a couple of things to you guys. First of all, this whole program is meant to be interactive. We love to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. And hey, let me say this. I want to know your thoughts and your feelings, your questions, and your concerns, even if you don't agree with me. The one thing I will say, and I always hate this when I have to do this, but I had to say to somebody on our Facebook page yesterday that the one thing we don't allow is hate speech of any kind. When something is your opinion, please make sure that you are couching it in a proper way, because we don't allow hate speech of any kind. And if I have to give warnings, I really hate to make people be blocked and not be on the page, but that is the one thing that we don't allow anybody to say, call somebody else out and say something negative that is an opinion. And I know sometimes it's really hard to know the difference between opinion and fact, and maybe that's something we'll talk about today, because that's a lesson that can be taught. But there is a fine line sometimes, and we don't allow for people to say negative things that are opinions about others on our page. We just don't. So there's that to be said. I also want to say, before we get too far, Traven's, by the way, going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us so that you can have your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions, and your concerns and your disagreements with me or others on the page. We do welcome diverse opinions because we're a diverse community. We're not going to agree on everything. And we should all welcome that and absorb that, because I've been absorbed the last week or so in so many different events, and I went to the Aut Fest on Sunday, and I can't wait to talk to you all about it. But what I felt after watching all these films, that very clearly the message was not only that different is okay, different is beautiful. And that if we don't embrace it, what are we doing? And we, especially in our community, have to embrace that. So you can be different in terms of how you feel. You can be different in terms of how you think. You can be different in terms of how you look. It's all beautiful. So we should be embracing all of that. So I just wanted to put that out there while Traven is showing you the ways to connect. But I also want to say that there is an event that's coming up here on Saturday, November 2nd, the Family Fun Day for the special, I'll try again, Family Fun Day. It's a mouthful, you guys, for the Center for Special Needs.org. They are looking for vendors to be at that event. So if you have an organization or something that you want to do a booth, we really want to encourage you to go to center4specialneeds.org and get yourself signed up for a booth. That is here in Southern California, but I wanted to make sure that people knew about that. I also want to say that our homepage is autism-live.com. You can be writing in there. You can be writing it on Facebook, be writing it on YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, all of those places as we begin to ask questions. Some of you have sent some questions in advance. but we welcome you guys to participate in all the ways that you would like to. Having said all of that, I want to welcome Evelyn Kung. And Evelyn, tell us what your position is here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
I'm the CARD clinical director. So I'm all about where is CARD going.
Yes.
In terms of clinical, no operations or business side, but really looking at what are the kids, who are the kids, what are we seeing, do we have everything they need, what kind of teaching do we need to do, anything that we need to develop, and just really looking. My favorite part is still working with the kids.
Yeah. And can I just say, you've been working in this field for many, many, many more years than one could tell but by looking at you. And it's a wonderful opportunity to have her here and be our expert when we don't have Dr. Graham Pichet, because I know whenever a parent is talking to me about something, I very frequently run to her and go, you know, where do we want to send this parent? And she's a wealth of information. She's pretty much seen, like, you know, every kiddo is different, but as we have seen and as research is showing, there are pockets of kids that are similar, and that we can learn from, okay, so we had this kiddo before who did this, and the way that we were able to teach this, so we don't have to reinvent that wheel. Let's try that with this kiddo and see if it works, and so often it does. So she's a wealth of knowledge, you guys. So thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We really appreciate it. Now, having said all that, we do have to give the disclaimer that there is no expert of any kind who could give individual advice in this format. That, you know, she doesn't have the opportunity to meet the individual, to find out more information. It's a very limited thing. So you're going to ask very specific questions, you guys, and write them into us however you want to do it. And then Ev will give us information, ask more questions sometimes, and then help you to see, okay, here's some of the things that we need to consider as you go back to the expert that actually has eyes on the case.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for that. Okay, so our first question, somebody wrote in and said, hello, in autism, is it normal that the autistic child doesn't recognize their parents?
So that's an interesting question, because I don't know if it's not in recognizing parents, because it could be that they're just not responding the way that you're expecting them to. I think most of our kids know who their parents are. It's just that their response is not the social norm. So it's really looking and seeing how they're responding to you. But on the other end, I know the research is like probably at least 10 or 15 years old. I haven't looked at it. One of the, I remember sitting in this lecture, and it was at UCSD, and what this professor did was they showed faces to people on the autism spectrum to see where in their brain faces lit up. And in the autism spectrum, it was everywhere. There was no consistent place. So sometimes faces would show up in the motor area, sometimes it would show up in the vision area, sometimes it would show up in the emotional area. And that gives you an idea of just some kind of wiring that is just not right. And so many of our kids don't look at faces. Or if they're looking at faces, they're looking at one little part, and that's how they're using to identify people. So a lot of times in just facial recognition, we do have kids who have what they call nonverbal learning disorder, where they don't see faces and body language and anything that's nonverbal information. They're not making the inference and connecting it to mean something. You know, and I've had kids on the autism spectrum who have like 100, their IQs are in the top 99.9%, and they've looked at me and they're like little kids, and they'll tell me, I don't understand that. We all speak English, so why would we need these nonverbal cues that you're talking about? Right. You know, why do we need facial expressions when we have words? And, you know, and there's so many kids where I watch them see faces, and when they're talking about it, it's not what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
You know, and their interpretation of what they see. And our kids also like routines. And like in the same way when they're outside, if I ask them what they're looking at, they're usually naming like their favorite things, but they also tend to name things that don't change. The grass is green, the sky is blue. And I'm telling them, hey, when you have conversations, you don't talk about things that never change. You talk, the interesting things are the things
that we wouldn't think about, but
you talk about the new and the novel and something unusual. And I've had kids tell me, but why?
Yeah.
Like, they don't want the things, they don't want to identify the things that change. And I just think faces change all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's been a tremendous amount of research lately about neurotypical people and faces and facial expression. I know we covered last year, there was a study where they showed people pictures of athletes in moments of triumph, but they blocked out their eyes and they asked how are they feeling. And this was of neurotypical people. And with the eyes not there, they got it wrong almost all the time.
Wow.
Now, I thought it would be interesting if you did the same thing with people on the autism spectrum to see if they also got it wrong or if they got it more right.
Yeah.
Right? We had a gentleman on, I'll have to go back and find the interview, but he's a doctor in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, or Scotland, who this is just what he looks at. And he's written a little, it's literally a booklet that you get and you just print out because it's a booklet that he's written about how people on the spectrum sometimes what they see, and he shows you pictures of, where we're looking at a picture of somebody and we see the eyes and the nose and the mouth, and for some people it's a pinwheel, that it all blends together, or that it's more like a Picasso.
Interesting.
And he's had tremendous luck with folks on the spectrum. You know how when we discovered that with dyslexia, that if you put different colored pieces of paper, then the words would stop jumping around for some people. He's done colored glasses for individuals on the spectrum, and it immediately stopped their toe walking.
Yeah.
And they could immediately see a different field of vision.
Yeah, we have a lot
crazy?
of kids actually. No, a lot of our kids have visual sensory issues, and yeah, the colored glasses. We've had a lot of kids on that. I mean, some of our kids don't see three-dimensional; they only see two-dimensional. And then it's not until we test them, with this vision testing, that we realize if you don't see corners, you don't see three-dimensional. How do you get through? But we had a parent come in and say, actually, he didn't know that things were three-dimensional until he ended up with glasses, but in his 30s. So he'd been driving and everything.
Oh my gosh.
But he had all these other type of markers to show him like where to stop with lines when he was driving and everything. He had a whole other set of rules. And it wasn't until he realized something was wrong with his vision that they were corrected, that he didn't know things were three-dimensional.
Yeah, well, I've also heard people talk about kids who are seeing two of something, and it isn't until they go to the developmental ophthalmologist that they realize, oh, they're seeing double vision and they need corrective lenses to see one, but they thought that everybody could see two.
Yeah, I actually have double vision, but I
Yeah.
didn't know I had double vision until I was in college, and the doctor, when he was looking at my eyes, because I didn't need glasses, and he's like, you see too? And I said, I do, I just never, and he's like, your brain just adjusted.
Wow.
But I didn't know, but it's only for things that are far away. It's a really crazy thing.
That is a very funny thing. But I have to say, this brings me to the next thing that, one of the things on our journey, I remember a time when you referred us to a developmental ophthalmologist. Am I getting it right? Ophthalmologist.
Optometrist.
Optometrist. So that my son could get tested. And then we found out that his eye muscles were not strong enough to focus. So that's part of why whenever he would look at things, he would look at them here because it was too hard for him otherwise.
Yes.
And then we did eye exercises because we went to that doctor, and it never had occurred to me that. And the doctor was like, he showed me my son sitting in a chair, and he had the like two balls on the end of these sticks, and one was gold and one was silver, and he would pass them and say to my son, "Don't move your body, just move your eyes to follow these." And it was tragic, you guys, to watch my son because he was like this, trying to see it, right? Because that's the only way that he could see it. And he said, imagine, my son was a very good reader by that point. He said, the fact that this young man can read shows that it was a powerful desire for him to want to read. He should be struggling with reading.
Yeah.
So something else to look at.
Yeah, no, so many of our kids, actually, when they come in with visual stereotypy, I can't go into it here, but there are a lot of kids that come in, and during an intake, I'll be like, just things I've picked up over the years, and then I will refer them because I'm like, he doesn't see.
Yeah.
Or there's just something that's not working right, and I don't know what it is. But yeah, I always encourage families, there's not enough of these people in the world, and it's hard for them to know how to manage behaviors of a kid if a kid has a lot of behaviors that's
Yeah.
on the spectrum. But when you can find a developmental vision optometrist who actually works with kids with usually learning delays, ADHD, whatever it may be, if you can get them evaluated, it makes a huge difference. We have so many families, and even the optometrists, because I'll send them no matter what age.
Yeah.
I'm not regulated by that.
Right.
And the optometrist that's local, he always says, I'm so amazed by the kids that come from you, because in the optometry world, a lot of people will say by this age it should be set.
Yeah.
But your kids actually continue to make progress
Yeah.
into their teens,
Yeah.
and you see it keep changing, and that's not what would be known in like the typical world.
Interesting.
And but he always tells me like they can keep coming as long as they keep improving.
Yeah.
And he says a lot of them just keep making that progress through their teen years.
It's kind of amazing.
It is.
So going back to this question about is it normal if a child doesn't recognize their parents? So we don't know if it's just that their reaction is different or they really truly are having some of this visual difference. But what I hear here is the parents, like I'm
They
reading
want.
between the lines, it's sad if your child, because we all want that
We
thing where
want
we
our
come in
parents.
the room. I can remember going to pick up my nephew at daycare and him saying, "It's Aunt Shannon, it's Aunt Shannon," and running across the room and going, "Oh, Aunt Shannon." And I thought, oh, someday I'm going to have a child and get this reaction too. And I didn't. That wasn't the reaction I got, because my son always thinks of, even now, I'm going to be there. Like he's shocked when I'm not. He's like, "What happened? Where's mom? Why is she not here?" You know what I mean? So there wasn't that big reaction. So part of this, I read sadness into this, because if your child isn't running into your arms, sometimes that's a real like, oh, what's
you miss
happening?
it.
Yes.
You want it, and that's normal.
Yes.
It's typical, and I mean it's a way that we read love.
Of course.
And
respect.
And
Sometimes, especially from the dads, that they're like, he's not even looking at me, so he doesn't respect me.
Yeah.
So part of that is the grief and dealing with that, but this can be worked on either way,
Definitely.
no matter which way it is. So what advice would we have them talk to their ABA provider and say, can you evaluate and see which one of these you think it is?
Yeah, and just I've taught kids to go running into their parents' arms, and out of session.
Yes.
Because especially if you're in a session, parents usually aren't a part of it all the time.
Yeah.
So the opportunity is really high with every break that you have, if the parent's around, or if at the end of the session when the parent comes pick you up, and just say, this is what you're supposed to do. When you see your parents, you run to them and you greet them.
Yes.
You say hi and you go grab them.
Yes.
And this is what's appropriate.
There you go.
And
then we reinforce that.
we reinforce that, and then we tell them it's only the parents.
Yes.
Not to strangers.
Right.
And then it's later on. But it's at the beginning, it's just we can say, if this is family, that's who they're familiar with. And most of the kids I've worked with, I'd say all the kids I work with do recognize their parents. It's just that the response is not, it's very muted, or just different.
Yeah.
So.
My son took a long time to know other people. So for instance, our his uncles and his aunts, and even someone that he really, really liked, a friend of mine who was very fun and played with him a lot. He hadn't seen her in probably a week, and then she was someplace where he didn't expect her to be. We went to a party, and I remember he looked up at her and he said, "I love you." But he didn't know who she was. He just knew, you're somebody that I'm happy to see, but he couldn't say her name, and that was a bummer for her for the longest time. She was like, I don't understand why he doesn't know my name. But then when he looked up at her, he said, I love you. It was just this funny thing of, you could read all the subtext. It was like, I'm not sure who you are, and I'm not used to seeing you here, but I know that you're somebody that my heart beats faster when I see. That made it a little bit better for her. But anyway, I guess my point is that our kids get there in the way that they get there, and we should be willing to see what it is. But if they need more help, go to see a developmental optometrist. See, there's all ophthalmologists, whatever. So Which one?
Optometrist.
Optometrist. I can't. It's like a
Developmental
mental-
vision optometrist.
Okay. And I know our insurance paid for it. So don't be afraid to at least ask. Okay, we're going to take a short break and then we're going to come back with more of your questions after these messages. Stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be creating a popsicle puzzle. As we do this fun activity, you'll notice these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about the skills we're using to create the craft and where you can find them on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based tool that helps parents create a curriculum that will help their children that are on the autism spectrum. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are popsicle sticks, tape, and arts and crafts materials. So step one, you're going to take your popsicle sticks and lay them down and cover them with tape so they don't move around. Now that my popsicle sticks have been secured with tape, here comes the fun part. You're going to take your arts and crafts materials, they can be paint, markers, whatever you have, and then you're going to decorate this with a beautiful picture. This is the beautiful picture that I made. Now what I'm going to do is remove the tape. And now, as you can see, they come apart. And here is your awesome puzzle. Now, the fun part is trying to assemble the picture that you just made now that it's all been separated. I hope you enjoyed this activity with me. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Kung, and she is the clinical director, yes?
Yes, I am.
I don't want to slaughter titles, here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's answering your questions in real time. We wanted to take just a second to say hi to some people on Facebook. We want to say hi to Elvira, and we want to say hi to Deborah, and we want to say hi to CJ. And Priyanka has written in a question and said, hello, can you please help and guide on verbal stimming? How can it be worked on? Why does a kid do verbal stimming? This is a tough one sometimes. I mean, my kid was a kid who, that was a really tough thing for us, was, and all, it's for kids, different kids, it's different stims.
It's different function.
Right?
So yeah, the first thing I would say is definitely get your BCBA involved, because it's getting them to figure out the function of the behavior. Self-stimulatory behavior or perseverative behavior is usually classified as an automatic behavior, but they have to go one more step. And they have to figure out, why is this kid repeating or scripting or whatever? Because what I've learned over the years is it's multiple functions under that automatic.
Yeah.
Sometimes kids do it just to hear themselves.
Yeah.
And it's noise. And then the replacement behavior I use for that one is music.
Yeah.
Because music, the songs are pretty much the same words over and over.
Right.
And you can just stick in the iPod, and hear. And a lot of times it just shuts off the verbal stimming. Sometimes it's the actual script that they like, the sequencing, the words, whatever it may be. Sometimes they verbal stim, they use scripts to talk to other people. And they use it as a communication piece. Those kids I'm always amazed at, because maybe their language is delayed and they don't know, so they take these lines from different movies to get their needs met.
Yeah.
And it's always incredible to me how they do that.
No,
it's
it
a
is.
skill.
It's like they've learned the language of the film and they plug those things into real life. And a lot of times people discount it. As I said, I was just at Autfest on Sunday, and one of the films that they were screening was life animated. And this is the perfect example if you want to know what this looks like, because Owen Susskind, this is exactly what he did. He would say Disney movie, lines from Disney movies, and they thought he was just like that it served no purpose, and that he was just saying it, and that they couldn't get him out of it. And then one day when a very big thing was happening with his brother, he was saying this line from Aladdin, saying diamond in the rough, diamond in the rough, to say he's having a hard time, but he's okay. He's just a diamond in the rough. When you think about the logic of that and being able to source something and find the line that goes with what's happening, I mean, that's so high functioning. Like, that's brilliance is what it is. But for he was doing it for years and they didn't realize what he was saying went with the situation.
Yeah, no, and a lot of kids who come through an intake, I see that. They think that it's just scripting from whatever movie, and usually the parents can even identify the movie because they've heard the movie so many times.
Right.
But when they look at the context of that script or that sentence that came in, it fits the situation perfectly.
It's really pretty. I mean,
it's
I don't
pretty
even know
amazing.
What,
yeah,
I mean,
that kind of manipulation in your brain. I can't do it. I know I can't do it.
To put that many things together to spit out this brilliant answer, it's really, I don't even have a word for it.
Yeah, so, I mean, you really do have to look at the real function, and function besides the automatic function, which is, that for some reason it's innately interesting or whatever it is. But you would target it the same way you do for any other behavior, any challenging behavior. You figure out the function, you teach some replacement behaviors, you prompt it so that they know how to use whatever the replacement behavior, and you start teaching them to talk, really. Because one thing with vocal stereotypy that I love, especially for the kids that are using it to a sentence to replace, a lot of our kids are tacting, or they're just commenting on the environment with those phrases. So they don't know how to say, like, hey, I like that, check that out. So they're using some phrase from some movie. So a lot of times the replacement behavior is to teach them to tact and just say, like, I really love that, and they just don't know how to say that.
Yes.
So that is one component, but have your BCBA go in, do a functional assessment or functional analysis on it. When does it come up? Does it come up all the time? Does it come up only when they're by themselves or with people? Or, there's all these things that they can probe and try to figure out, like, when this is happening. And what I've learned with vocal stereotypy is it's usually what we call multiple functions.
Yeah.
So in one session, it might be like, hey, every time I say this, everybody looks at me. And it's like, oh, attention.
I get that attention. Yes.
And other times they'll say it and they're by themselves, but then you realize, oh, they're listening to themselves.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's teach them how to listen to music.
Right.
Or something everything else, that's appropriate, you know. And it's just really breaking it down, figuring out, is there another replacement behavior that can go in there? Because really with vocal stereotypy, the majority of the time it is non-functional. And, you know, we all know that the more non-functional behavior there is, the less functional behavior there is.
Yeah.
So I always say it's this teeter-totter, or like graph, things go up and down. And I want stereotypy to go down, which is non-functional, and increase the functional behavior. So I'm teaching things for them to use it. And, you know, so in terms of vocal stereotypy, I'm like, hey, they're making sounds, and that's great. There are some kids that come in and have no sounds whatsoever.
Right.
And those are the kids, then I'm like, do they make sounds?
Yes.
Like, when do they make sounds? Only when they're crying? Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And parents look
Any
at me.
sound is
I will
is
take
good.
sounds.
You can build off of that.
Yeah, and I'm looking for sounds. So the kids that are really just like scripting and everything,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we can do something with you.
Yes. But I just want to go back for a second to make sure, because I think a lot of times as parents, we see anything that's odd to us, we see and we go, oh, what is that thing? And I don't know why the default is that's just something weird that's happening and has nothing to do with everything else. But everything has a function. Everything has a reason. There is I love that you're saying, what is the reason for it? Because there is a reason for it. It is serving that child in some way.
Yes.
And when you talk about putting a replacement behavior in, you're talking about finding something that's a little bit more functional, but also gets that need met.
Yes.
And I think that's the important thing that a lot of people miss. They think, oh, you just want to make that behavior stop because you're uncomfortable with it, right? And that is not what this is about.
Nope.
I know for my son, he made these high-pitched noises that when he was little, like nobody really particularly cared. But once he was in kindergarten and first grade, the other kids would be like, I don't want to sit next to him. He makes noises. I can't concentrate when he's making noises, right? And it was serving a purpose for him, and we had to find a way to get that need met.
Mm-hmm.
And have him be able to still be in the classroom where he was learning.
Yeah.
So you don't just totally go, oh, that's not important, we're going to take that away. I have a lot of people who will watch the show and say, well, ABA, it's just that you guys don't like the hand flapping and you don't like them making the noises and you want them to fit into society and you want to take that away from them. And I just want to make it clear that it's not about taking things away. It's about getting their needs met in the most functional way that they can.
It's most functional, but also your kids have a lot of other wants and desires.
Mm-hmm.
They want to interact. They want to be a part of things and do things, and you don't want those behaviors to exclude them.
Right.
You really want them to, because they're going to find all these other skills and things that they can do outside too. When you can't think of another way, you're going to do what you know.
Yes.
And we're all that way.
We all are.
Yeah, we all are that way. So yeah, we don't want to change them because there's a lot of people who say ABA, it's just changing their personality. And I was like, oh no, even if I tried, I couldn't change your personality.
But why would anybody want to?
I know, nobody would want to.
That's not in question. But we want them to be able to do all the things that they want to do.
Yes.
And by the way, if they really have a need to do the vocal stereotypy, or otomy, is it otopy or otomy?
Stereotypy.
Stereotypy. Okay. So yeah, I'm asking all the wrong questions today. But for some kids, it's a thing about, well, you can do this at this time on this day when there's not other people around. Because if you think about it, we all do that.
We all schedule everything.
There are times when I like to sing at the top of my lungs. It is the thing that calms me down the most. I just don't do it when there's other people in my house.
Well, and you know not to do it if you're in a learning situation.
Well, and I know not to do it in the middle of the show, right? Because you would all run screaming, right? Yeah. I have a time and a place in which I can do this. I have a friend who her husband sisses, and they'll be driving, and she's like, I can't, let me off. Leave me at a gas station. I can't take it. So he knows. He does that all the time when she's not there. And he gets his needs met to do that in other times, in other ways with her. But we all do this.
We all do it. I love rereading books that I love. Mm-hmm. And my husband just thinks it's crazy. You read that already. Why are you reading it again? I was like, because it makes me feel good.
Right.
And I just know I'm not going to do it all the time, but if I want to just relax.
And there are times and places in which you can do certain things, but But the first thing is getting their need met.
Yes.
And so if they have a need that is, and there is a need being met if they're doing it.
Yes.
And if they're doing it repeatedly. So we look at that first and put a replacement behavior in and teach other skills. And that's a really
It
fabulous
widens
thing.
their world.
It's a fabulous thing. All right, you guys, we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back with more of your questions. As we go to break, I just want to say a big hello to my really good friend, DC. I want to get it right. DC, the Purple Diva. She says, "Hola, everyone from SoCal." And I got to meet her on Sunday at Autfest. I got to meet a bunch of people at Autfest, but I so loved getting to meet her. It was such a good time. If you weren't there, I'm going to be talking about it all week long. So you're going to have to put up with me because there were some amazing things, but especially there's a new show that's coming out from Freeform. It's technically Disney Freeform. It's a new 1-hour dramedy. It's not going to be released until January, but I can't stand it, you guys, because it's so good. I just enjoyed it so much. It's called Everything's Gonna Be All Right. And the gentleman who is the mastermind behind it, he is the creator, the writer, and the star. You guys are just gonna fall in love with Josh Thomas. I posted a picture on Facebook of him. He is the sweetest thing ever, but he's hilarious, and what he has written is just amazing. So we're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. We've got more comments from you guys that we're gonna be checking in on, so stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about a allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's full of crap
cereal.
and it's hard to do. We
Yeah.
don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not.
Personality, we can't do
Yeah, I
anything
can't
about.
do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with, I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're gonna go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're gonna add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Kung, and she's answering your questions in real time. We had somebody who wrote in and said, can I teach my 4-year-old nonverbal to play soccer? He's very active and loves to play with his ball, but he gets distracted very easily and loses interest quickly.
Okay, so a lot of our kids like balls. And actually related to the last question,
Yeah,
why do they like balls? Sometimes it's a great cause and effect toy.
there you go.
I can kick it, punch it, whatever, and it does something.
Yes,
A lot of our kids love balls because for the visual stereotypy
Yes.
involved. They like to watch it go.
Yeah.
And it's perfect.
yeah,
Soccer in itself, I think at that age, yes, you can teach your child to play soccer, to go, how to kick it, how to dribble. There's actually some great programs out there at parks for kids with disabilities where one of my favorite ones that I do with kids, and everybody always laughs, and all the soccer coaches think it's so funny, is I just take duct tape or bright colored tape, and I put it on their cleats, and I just put the colored tape there and say, this is where you're supposed to kick the ball when you play soccer.
Oh.
You know, the
Right.
inside of your foot. And this is what you use. And it's like, it's concrete, it's a marker, they use it, and they just start learning. And actually, they become pretty good at kicking and making direct goals. The harder part is later on. Because early on, it is all the kids are a swarm and they just go.
Right.
But as soccer becomes more complicated, and this is for all team sports, it relies on social cues.
yes,
And that is just really hard for so many of our kids because they can be running down the field, but they're supposed to be looking for the person who's open and catch the glimpse of the person
Right.
who's signaling.
It's a lot.
And, there's just a lot of information coming at once, and it just becomes very difficult to manage that. That's to say, not to say that they can't do it. We've had
Yeah.
kids who do it. It just becomes very difficult because reading those nonverbal signals is what becomes the hard part.
but at 4, that's
At
a great
4,
time to start.
It's great. 4, 5, 6, 7 even is pretty good. You can get them to keep going. It's a great social relationship. It's out there. The kids are just having fun.
And there is a whole ASO league that's just for,
Yes.
that moves at a different pace. Because I know a lot of times it's very frustrating to me that there are parents who think that 4-year-old soccer is, is everything. Because we're getting my kid ready for a scholarship, so your kid's messing my kid up. And they have that level of intensity, and that
Definitely.
worries me sometimes. I think
he's
it's great
4.
to start
Have
young.
fun.
Yes.
Give him some concrete things like a little piece of tape on
I
a shoe.
love that. See, I didn't
You
even
know?
know that. You're supposed to hit it with the side of your foot, not
Yeah.
that toe.
Not your toe.
Didn't
You
know.
do not toe.
Did not know. Soccer, soccer didn't get really, I'm that old. Soccer didn't get really popular in the States till I was a little bit older. We played field hockey with the sticks and
Well,
did
let me
that.
tell you something interesting, and this happened with one of my kids my teenagers who came in, who didn't do well. Social cues are just really hard for him, and actually they got him into lacrosse.
Oh, that's
And
a cool thing.
lacrosse, you wear a mask,
Ah.
so there's fewer social exchanges
very
that are done,
interesting.
and he was actually really good because. And I was telling one of our supervisors, who was captain of his lacrosse team in college or something, that so many of our kids use peripheral vision.
Yeah.
One of the skills as a lacrosse player is to look one way and hit it the other.
Ooh. Ooh.
So you look here and
Right.
you hit it that way. You throw it that way.
So maybe
And
our kids would be
Our
extra
kids are
good.
naturals.
Wow.
So this 12-year-old came in and said he was doing great. Lacrosse is up and coming, and he was just excelling with
That's
as a
kinda
teenager.
cool.
And when I went to go see him, I was like, that's what makes him good, because he was faking everybody out.
That's pretty awesome.
And then so when I was telling my friend who's a lacrosse player, he was like, yeah, that's actually a skill that lacrosse players work for.
How sweet is that? and I have to say, too, there's this whole culture of team. I know from having worked in sales at some points in my life that, when they're looking to put somebody in a sales team, they always are looking for, is this somebody who played a team sport? Because they just have this understanding of how things work, and they're competitive, and they'll race against each other, but work as a team. It's like a thing to be desired because there's a social element to it, right? And, people said to me early on, you got to make sure he does a team sport. He's a boy. You got to make sure he does a team sport. And I I was like, I just don't see that. We did a little bit of Little League, but he wasn't as particularly interested, and so I did not see it. But I do see now that my son is on his competitive robotics team, that the team element, and you know, there's places where he has strengths and places where he has weaknesses, but I do see the benefit of at some point working on it because it's the collaborative piece.
But you know what you caught on to, and this is actually what I tell with the kids I work with. I say find a sport that is individual based with a lot of repetition, which is your kid's skill usually.
Right.
And it's things like golf.
Yes.
Tennis.
Yes.
You know, they're individual sports, swimming, running, cross country. They're all individual sports, but you work as a team.
There you go.
So that becomes their social group in high school.
Yes.
They have a team that they're a part of. They work competitively. They can come together and know like who can do which sport, you know, what's part of the sport. And they just have an automatic social group and they have teamwork. But it's an individual sport within a team.
I love that.
And so many of our kids really, really do so well with it. And all levels too.
What a wonderful thing to be looking for when you're looking for, first of all, you want to prioritize your ABA program at this age, right? But having those autism enrichment things around the side that help inform, you know, your ABA program and a place for them to try out things that they're learning in their ABA program in a safe environment. It's a really, and with other kids, I think are a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to switch now to a question came in about what are our thoughts on the Gemini program that's online for helping with talking. And we kind of talked about this during the break, and neither one of us has extensive experience. We've had them on the show before. I know that there are some people who have had tremendous results with kiddos, and sometimes it's even older kiddos. For those of you who don't know, this is a language program that a lot of what it focuses on is you put it on in the background. It's like not supposed to be the thing where you sit your kid in front of the TV screen. It's on in the background. You keep it on at the table, and a lot of times they do close-ups of the mouth, and there's people saying things, and for some of our kids, that sort of immersion in it, while anything you have going on can be very, very valuable. So we have had a few viewers who have tried it and loved it. We've had other people who said that technically they had difficulties with it and it wasn't their favorite thing. So if anybody's watching who wants to write in and say what their experience has been, we would love to hear from that. But they go on to say, I'm having to redo academics for my son now as an adult, everything that school didn't bother to teach. Now I think that's something else that could be addressed because you probably know more than anybody else about what's in Skills Living and what's available. If it's if you've got an older kiddo that has those gaps and it wasn't done in school, and that's very frustrating.
Yeah, I've actually what's interesting about this is I've had my ADHD clients are the prime people who I've worked with, the ones that come in and maybe their friend or a sibling is on the spectrum and they realize the value. And there are so many of our kids in the early school age grades where you're really learning the core of math and just different academic skills where they weren't getting the information in. It was being taught, but they weren't getting it and taught in that mode. And so then they go on and they become a little bit more of a self-advocate where they're trying to figure things out. And then they don't know that they don't know the basics. They've heard about all these academics. They know what money is, but it's really hard to count. They know what fractions are, kind of, because they've seen pictures. But the basic skill is not fluent. It takes a lot of work to go back. And one thing that we've learned from like the older teens is they have to have something to go to when they're done with school. And it's becoming more and more open with that field. But a lot of times it's money and time.
Yeah.
And I've taken 18-year-olds who managed to graduate high school, but still are not fluent with counting money. And, they've learned compensatory methods, like if something costs, below 10, they always just have a $10 bill.
Yes.
Anything under 20, they get the $20 bill.
Right.
And they can't count the change back. It would just take them too long. So with those kids and those families, I always say, hey, sit down, and actually DTT is the best thing for this. Discrete child therapy is a form of teaching ABA under the ABA umbrella. And what it does is it breaks down information into small parts, and you learn how to identify, how to express, and then how to use it. And it works it at a level till it's fluent. And when I say if a skill is fluent, it means that they can do it easily. They don't really have to think about it. When there's some kind of time pressure, they can easily deliver the skill without warning. And so many of the kids out there have a base skill, but it just takes them too long to add or subtract or figure out time.
So they've got it. It just isn't fluent
It's
enough.
just not fluent enough. So what I always do is I'll actually put it into a discrete trial format, make sure they have the basics for the whole thing.
Right.
And then once I realize, okay, fill in the gaps, whatever gaps were there, then I work on it and on a time base now.
Right.
How fast can you do this?
Right.
And we slowly increase the amount of time, or shorten the time that they have to produce the skill, and get it to a point where they can use it in real life, where they can go into a restaurant or a shop, or just being able to read time and getting places on time. A lot of times they should have learned this when they were in elementary school, but they just didn't get those skills.
Well, there's so much that kids absorb on their own, and there's so much that kids miss. And I'm talking about all kids. Neurotypical kids absorb a whole bunch and miss a whole bunch of stuff too. I used to teach in the classroom, and we would always, talk about our kids and say, they're Swiss cheese. There's a whole lot there, but there's holes, and the holes have to be stopped up. And for kids on the spectrum, there's that much more opportunity to have missed important things. But there is skills living for you to help yourself get caught up. And because I happen to know that this mom lives in California, the regional center, I know everybody seems to think that, now that there's insurance, regional center is no longer necessary or important. And I think nothing could be further from the truth from our young adults.
Definitely.
That there is now self-determination, that there's a group going through that are working out the kinks on it. But next year, all of our kids are going to have self-determination, and you're going to see that more and more providers are popping up that are regional center funded and approved. We've been trying to feature them here on the show, but there are all kinds of resources to do all kinds of things with adults. It's not game over, it's game on.
Yeah.
But I love that this mom is like, I'm taking it on. I'm teaching my son all the things that he didn't learn at school. But I would say try skills living out.
Try skills living, and if you have an ABA provider, they can direct you to see we can teach this very quickly in this format, or there's a lot of websites actually that can, especially with time and money. There's a lot of just regular learning websites that you can go on and just practice, a lot of the basic skills. And it's really just organizing yourself to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
But they can learn. I've seen it.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we started late, but we got to end on time all the same. I want to thank you for being here today with us, and I want to thank all of you for being with us. We are going to be back tomorrow with another live show. I know there's some question and concern about when are we absolutely live. We are live on Wednesdays and Thursday mornings. Sometimes, a lot of the times, we pre-tape for Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, but on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we are here live, and we love to have conversations with you guys. So tomorrow, we have Jessica Plogue-Frigola.
Very
Am I
good.
saying that even close to right?
I don't know how to say it, to be honest.
Right, so she'll have to tell us. And then we're going to have Stephen Clark, the host of Cyber Time Bite, a podcast. Can't wait to talk with him. And then on Friday, we have Jeanette Magro, who is the co-author of this really sweet book, My Life with Gary. Gary is not who you think Gary is. A couple of weeks ago, we had the book Daisy Has Autism, and I kept saying to everybody, Daisy is not who you think Daisy is, because Daisy was the dog. Gary is not who you think he is, and he's not the dog. So you're going to have to tune in on Friday during Let's Talk Autism to find out about that. And she's also the founder of autisminclassrooms.org. And then and we have the co-host of Simple. She is the co-host of Simple Social Stories, which this is what this is. But My Life with Gary. I'm not telling you. You have to come on Friday, and then you'll find out who Gary is. And believe me, it's not who you think. Now I'm going to ask you after we get off the air who you think Gary is. But anyway, appreciate you guys so much. Love having the opportunity to be here with you. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, and I'm going to be talking about AutFest all week long because I have so much to say. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.